Hey everyone, Matt here. Sorry for interrupting the intro, but I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new series called 10-Minute Tuesdays. And these are 10-minute episodes where I break down a tactic, talk about mindset or personal development, or anything else that jumps in my mind. Tune in next Tuesday for our first 10-Minute Tuesday episode. And also drop me a line and let me know what you think about our new intro to this podcast. Thanks, and let's get back into it. Welcome to the Mobile Hunters Dojo, a community helping hunters reach their full potential in the woods and in life. I'm your host, Matt Lear. Come on in, kick off your shoes, and take a seat on the mat as we develop a mindset for success, forge self-discipline, practice the art of continuous improvement, and hone our craft. Welcome to the Mobile Hunters Dojo. I'm your host, Matt Lear, the White Belt Sensei, and this week, Nolan Taylor dropped by the dojo. Nolan has taken 462 inches of antler from 3 deer over the past 2 seasons. Man, we dive into a lot of stuff in this episode. We get into mindset, fighting against the comfort trap, truck camping, the struggles of solo hunting, and of course his amazing 22 and 23 seasons. So let's not wait any longer and let's jump into this episode. So I was going across your feed and it's interesting because you have maybe 8 posts on it.
Yeah, there's not much.
There's not much
there. Yeah.
And I click on one of them and I want to read it just to kind of set the tone because this is what made me reach out to you. So on one of your posts you wrote, as one hunting season winds down, the next is already beginning for me. Plans of off-season scouting are already falling into place, and if I plan on having any form of success next year, that starts now. I spent some time reflecting on my past 3 years as a hunter, whom every year seems to become more and more obsessed with the pursuit of these animals. I have been extremely fortunate to have harvested 5 different bucks across the span of 3 different states, 4 of them on public land. I have not only grown as a hunter through these experiences, but most importantly, as a man. Grit, patience, and emotional maturity are the main things that come to mind. But to fall into the trap of comfort and that I've been successful in the past attitude would be a mistake. It's my belief that to be continuously successful in this game, every year needs to be a fight. Mother Nature doesn't care what you've done before or how figured out you think you have it. I listen to the people who are continually successful in the deer woods, and the song remains the same. Nature will continue to humble you no matter what. Just build yourself as much luck as you can through hard work and dedication to the process. Set your intentions and go after it. Dude, I read that and I was like, I got to talk to this guy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Sweet.
It's the mindset, like what you wrote there really encompasses the dojo and what this podcast is trying to, encourage people to do. It's cool. The mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so before we get into that, because there's a lot there to talk about, why don't you give us a little bit of background of who you are and kind of like where you hunt and all that good stuff?
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, my name's Nolan Taylor, 29, Southeast Michigan. Live in a little town called Ortonville, about an hour north of Detroit. Grew up hunting in Michigan my whole life. My dad hunted with his buddies, got me into it like real young. We used to hunt in the up north, but still lower peninsula is pretty much where I learned to hunt. Before I was allowed to shoot a deer, I was crawling around shooting grasshoppers with a little BB gun. And eventually that progressed to sitting with my dad, the very traditional Michigan style deer camp, hunting over bait. Just out there having a good times. You knock down a couple good bucks every year. And my whole life up until probably 5 years ago, it was pretty much revolved around private land. I met some really cool dudes that I work with, and they kind of got me into the whole public hunting thing. The permission we had in Michigan went away, and it was just like a cool transition period that happened. And now most of my hunting I do is in Southern Ohio. As everybody knows, there's a ton of public land down there. It's pretty much endless. The guys from work pretty much showed me the ropes down there, and that's just progressed into me driving everywhere and being all over the place type of deal.
Yeah. And that's another thing that drew me to your account was, I think I saw a picture of like you laying in the back of your truck bed with this amazing view
Mm.
And, I relate to that because I'm a truck bed,
Yeah, yeah, I saw your
hunter as
setup. It's
well.
cool.
Yeah. So immediately it was like, okay, he's part of the same tribe. So I want to just jump back into this real quick, what you wrote here, because there's some things that stood out that I think are super important for people. But
Mhm.
this whole idea of the comfort trap, and I've had success in the past. I read that and I'm like, man, I have seen I have been guilty of that, of like hanging my hat up on what I've done in the past. And as I've gotten over that, I've watched more and more people kind of get stuck on that, like this continuously like talking and reflecting of the Bucks in the past.
Yeah, yeah.
What is, I mean, what made you think that to write that piece of it? Like especially the I've had success in the past part, and that being a mistake.
Yeah. Well, I guess it applies to, for me, hunting, but also just like life in general.
Yeah.
Like the comfort trap is just like not good. And like my personality type, I need to constantly be challenged and like chasing the next thing to feel fulfilled and happy.
Yep.
But especially for deer hunting, like if you kill a huge buck, obviously you appreciate the moment, you appreciate the road that it took you to get there. But if you want to like continually be successful, you got to keep that passion and fire alive. And luckily for me, killing a mature buck on public land means a ton to me,
Yeah.
but it doesn't put the fire out at all. It seems to just like make it worse for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I just try and it's just a mindset thing that I try to apply to my life, and it just bleeds into hunting. And between your career and for me hunting, that's like my two really big things that I like to delve into. And yeah, I just try and keep that flame alive and just always chasing, always looking for the next thing, always trying to improve, learn more. That's where the good stuff happens.
Yeah, it is. It really does. And so let me ask you, when did you get your first big buck, whatever you consider to be a big buck?
Well, I shot this one over there in a permission piece in southern Michigan.
Yep.
That one was kind of a fluke. I was young and just sitting in a tree stand that we always had. It was actually an overgrown field and just popped up and walked right at me type of deal. Obviously an awesome experience, but the first one that I feel like things started to happen for me was, it's funny, it was my first year in Ohio and it wasn't even like a big buck yet. My first year down there, I hunted for like 7 days straight and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like setting up on the top, hunting saddles like everybody like does, and I was just bouncing between scrapes and got to that point where like you're defeated and then went through it and then got defeated again. And that deer meant a ton to me because that one just got the ball rolling. It was like 100-inch 8 point, middle of the day, which growing up, like, you sit
Yeah.
till 9:30 if you're patient, 10 o'clock, and then you're back at camp. So like it was the first time I saw deer in their natural habitat. And then that deer specifically, it may not be the biggest buck in the world, but it just like something happened with that. And just the ball just started to roll down the hill and things changed for me a lot.
So when you were hunting here in Michigan, I mean, did you consider yourself to be successful in what you were doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were fortunately on like a really good property.
Hmm.
Shot a lot of does, always had meat in the freezer, saw some really good bucks on the property, but didn't have the knowledge or skill set to get in on them. It,
Yeah.
it was like the last year of the property my brother and I started to figure out, and then it got away from us. But that's the progression of learning though. You look back at the things you do when you were younger, and I'm seeing some bigger bucks and just blasting the grunt call, just like come on in type of thing. It's just the things that you learn, and along the way you just progress through those mistakes.
So do you think, so let me back up real quick. Were
Mhm.
you mobile hunting here in Michigan, or did that come when you went public?
Yeah, that came with the public land. The experience on the private land was just preset tree stands over trails that the deer used every year.
Yep.
There was thought into it, but it was more just repetition and going out for the experience. It wasn't until my first year in Ohio, which I think was 5 or 6 years ago now,
Hmm.
that I got a saddle, and that's when things really started to change.
So that's what I've noticed after talking to a few guys who went from what I'll call more that traditional, stationary stands, like the property, so you know where to set them, and then they moved to this like public land, like and specifically for the guys actually who haven't had anybody like really hold their hand the whole process. They usually probably have somebody who introduced them to it, got them in a little bit, but then they're
Mm-hmm.
just throwing everything against the wall trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched or heard their like progression like exponentially go up. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden everything starts to click and it starts to come together. And I've watched these guys and it looks like you're one of them who all of a sudden just, I mean, they're killers out there on the public. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's really interesting. And I bring that up and I say that out loud is for anybody who's listening that this is really like going mobile. And it doesn't matter if it's on public or if it's on private. I think public gives you a little bit more freedom to make a little bit more mistakes. Really, I mean, you can catch up and grow pretty quickly by getting
Yes.
out there and doing it.
Yeah. When you're mobile, you end up where you need to be, whether that's you're walking in and you see something and you get that feeling, or you get that you just see it and it's obvious. You're like, I need to be here. Or, you sit for a day or two and you realize, okay, everything's happening 60 yards to the right.
Yeah.
When you can just get out of your saddle, take your sticks down and bump over there, it's pretty easy. But the mental aspect of like, all right, I got this ladder stand here. I got to take this whole thing down. It's going to be
Yeah.
super loud. Probably going to make a ton of noise moving it over there. It's it's a game of inches, archery hunting. And when you're hunting public, you're not cutting stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
can't really do much to change the game outside of move if you're not in the game.
Yep. Yeah. So back into what you wrote here. I love this last sentence. You said, just build yourself as much luck as you can through hard work and dedication to the process. And I love that you said build as much luck as you can. One, it's a real humble approach. I mean, I think, what we do, a lot of us are men. Even the women in this space that I've seen have ego. Like we all, like
Everybody does.
Hunter has,
Everybody.
hunters have this ego. Like when we
Yeah.
talk about, like, we want to say we did it, we figured it out, we broke it down, we put it all together. But if I'm honest with myself on the bucks that I've killed, some of them, and really the most significant ones, had an element of luck. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're bed hunting, I mean, there's a few different bets he could be in. Is he going to be in there on that day? The fact that he's there that day,
Yeah,
has an element of luck. So I just really appreciate you saying it that way, because it really is.
yeah.
And it's not luck in the sense of like Lucky Charms. It is hard work and dedication and getting all of the pieces.
Mhm.
And then you set yourself up for luck to happen,
Yeah, that's where I seem to find success. Like, I'm always in the headspace of like, I really don't feel like I'm that good at hunting. Half the time I'm out there hanging in the tree, I'm like, this is the worst setup you could have. Like, I feel like I'm off. I haven't seen a deer in 3 days. I'm just lost in the world. And it only takes one for it to work. And that's where the building the luck comes in. Like the buck I killed last year, I think I hunted for like 17 days or something like that. I missed a buck, saw a ton off in the distance, and it's just through that, just going and going and going. Eventually it comes together. And not all people have the time to do that. I understand my situation's a little different than others, but for me, that's where I find success. Because I'll be honest, most time I'm in the woods, when I'm scouting, I feel like I get into the stuff. Like,
Yeah.
this is a sweet setup. This is awesome. I found all this sign. Here's the bed. He's going to do this. And then hunting season comes around. I go out there and I'm like, what was I even looking at? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there aren't even deer within a mile of me.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. I feel that way every time I'm out there during hunting season.
Yeah.
And the same thing when I'm scouting. I love scouting. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Scouting's the best.
Yeah. I feel so good about the stuff that I'm seeing, and I'm taking my time and breaking it down. And then I go sit in that tree stand, a few months later, I'm like, I'm a fraud, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I didn't
Yeah.
have,
And
it's funny how that messes with your head.
that scouting for me has changed a lot too. The first couple of years I was scouting, I was just throwing out trail cameras in every single scrape I found out in the woods. And then like, this is a setup and that is a setup and this is a setup. But as you hunt and refine your game, your your index of like suspicion, it takes a lot more for you to say like, okay, this is actually a good spot. So this year I scouted the most I've ever scouted before. And I feel like I found like two spots I'm actually pumped about. When in the past, I got 13 setups this year. It's like, well, 12 of them were pretty terrible. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, but that's the repetition and just having the ability to, you're going to have to fail, you're going to have to walk a lot and just figure it out type of thing.
Yeah, I was ready to say what you just described was a recipe for success for guys who are just getting into this. Like go throw as
Yeah.
many cameras on as many scrapes as you can find because it's going to teach you which scrape is significant, which one's
Yeah.
not. You know.
It's through it's through the failure of, you're going to, I like hunting far and remote. And I know that's, there's places by the road. That's just like my style of what I like. I like
Mhm.
challenging myself and I like the feeling of I just walked really far and I'm the only one back here. And, you know, there were so many cameras I put out where it's like you walk all the way back, you're like, oh, this looks cool. You pop camera and you come back later in the season, you're like, okay, I got one doe.
Yeah.
Like this is rough. I just wasted like 8 hours. But instead of thinking it as a waste, it's a lesson. You learn from it. And then you try and break down, okay, why wasn't this that good? All right, well, then you look at the licking branch and you're like, well, that was really small and
Yeah.
it doesn't really look like it's getting used that much. And then you look at the scrape and you realize, okay, this is more of a testosterone style scrape. I think a buck was just fired up and did this. And this isn't, you also look at the terrain and go, this wouldn't even make sense for a community scrape. So there's a lot of different factors that, like you said, through repetition and failure, you start to pick those things apart, figure that out.
Yeah, you know what I noticed this weekend when I was scouting with a couple buddies of mine, and we came across this spot that the rubs were just very unique in there, and we
Mm,
started like putting this narrative together in our head. And
yeah.
I remember like we're talking about like, okay, he's getting up, he's doing this, and this is why he's
Mm,
doing that. And I remember like looking at one of the guys and being like, I feel like I'm full of shit right now, you know?
yeah.
But what that does, what I realized what that does though is it really doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. It's
Mm,
helping me learn because we're gonna
yeah.
watch and see how it unfolds.
Yeah.
And I think people are like I was nervous to try to guess at what things were or what I thought they were out on the woods
Mm,
early on because I was like, well, what do I know?
mm,
But I noticed that with guys who are consistent, and I've noticed in my own growth as I walk into those spots like you were just doing and starting to play this out. Hey, I think that's a testosterone scrape. I don't think that's, a scrape that's been dominant and year after year after year. And you start putting this narrative in your head and then testing it. And I think that's what starts to really, instill the lessons in your head. You have to
yeah.
test these things. You have to throw these crazy hypotheses out there and what you're
Yeah.
seeing.
And that's what it is. Like it's kind of like the scientific method. Our setups are theories. We have a
Yeah.
theory that this scrape is really good and they're going to do this. We have a theory that this bed is here because the wind's doing this, and maybe there's a thermal hub, and he's going to walk this way and you're going to be wrong on a lot of those theories, but it only takes one to be right, and
Yeah.
that's the one that works. You only need to, you know, Ohio, you get one tag. You just got to be right one time, and make the rest happen. Obviously, but it's not guesswork, but it's an educated guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those who aren't watching this, you've been right quite a few times. I mean, you've got a pretty nice wall behind you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so I something just clicked in my head. How big was the deer that you killed last year?
My brother and I taped it out at 164, so I call it a 165. We have a rounding rule
Yeah.
in our household. But these are garage scores. We were conservative with our measurements, but I'm not like trained in how to do it and stuff. We looked up online how
Yeah, I
to
mean,
measure a deer, taped it a bunch of times.
you're close enough. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's 2023. And then in 2022, and I think that's where this thing that I'm reading came from. You killed 2 bucks.
We killed $2 in
And
2022. Yep.
what were the size of those two?
I got a 150 in Ohio and a 152 in Montana.
So in 3 years, you've got like 412 inches
Yes.
in 3 years, man. That's pretty
Yeah.
awesome, dude.
Yeah.
That's so
Thanks.
cool. So Can you walk me through you said that first one was in Montana? Is that where you killed it?
Yeah, Montana. Yep.
Have you been out there before?
Just on a road trip, never hunting. I started putting in for points, and I have this like saying where buy the tag and then I guess I'm going hunting. So I bought preference points for Montana, looked up how to get a general deer tag, bought the tag, and then it was like, well, I guess I got to figure this out because I'm going to Montana. My goal was to hunt a whitetail out west. I looked at a lot of the public land, and there's some good bucks out there, but I knew I was going to be real lost in the sauce going out to the mountains. I've hiked in the mountains a little bit, but never hunted them. This was my first Western style hunt. So what I did was I did a bunch of trips to a coffee shop, and I was just scouring Onyx for what looked like good whitetail habitat. Put a million pins, and then I just hand wrote letters to, I don't remember what it was. I think it was around like 50 letters. I was just shelling them out to Montana, and I got two yeses. One of the properties, it was down to two properties. The one just looked incredible, and the one was just halfway decent. They were pretty far from each other, so I opted for the one. Just this really awesome older gentleman who's got some family property. It's like 700 acres.
Wow.
It's the Rocky Mountains are to the north of it. It's a bunch of rolling terrain that goes out to ag. I went out there in the summer, scouted it, put trail cameras up. It was an early season hunt. I hunted the opener, which is September 1st or 2nd out there. So it was just bed to feed. I was watching just like the ridge lines going out to the ag. And it is an incredible property. The first morning I went out there, I had talked to the neighbor before, and I didn't know what to expect. And he was like, yeah, there's good deer around here. Like, you'll see a lot, especially in the early season. I set up in the first morning. I saw like 13 deer come in and out. There was like 5 bucks, and 3 of them were shooters. And I was like, what is going on? Actually, the first morning I missed one, which was substantially smaller than the buck I ended up killing. But yeah, it was just a permission property that I just grinded out writing letters. And there's some cool people out in the world if you just try and talk to people or reach out.
Dude, that's awesome. Did you go by yourself or did you have somebody with you?
Yeah, I went by myself. I camped out of my truck actually for that one.
And did you already have a truck set up before you did that, or was that part of?
So the year prior, I believe, is when I got my truck set up. One of my really good buddies at work, he's built like a bunch of houses. He did most of the building. I pretty much showed up with like an idea, and then like he held my hand as the saw did the cuts and pretended that I built it. But yeah, the truck setup is really clutch for scouting, and I've done a couple different hunts out of it. I did an antelope hunt out of it, the Montana hunt. When I shot that buck in Ohio that year, I was camping out of the truck. I wouldn't be as successful as I have been if it wasn't for the truck setup. Just the amount of saving money, and
Yeah.
again, being mobile, you're in a spot it's pretty bad. Well, you just drive somewhere else, and you got your bed right there.
I know we were talking about that today with a group that I'm going hunting with, and we all have truck setups except for one. And he's like, "Hey, I think I have to go get a topper." And I threw something out there trying to be nice. I think I said, "Well, we can get an Airbnb," and immediately everybody's like, "No, like we need to be able to travel if we have to. There's no way we're going to get locked down." I'm like, "Yeah, I really didn't want an Airbnb either, but trying to be nice."
They're super helpful, especially the ability to get away from towns. Also, you can just park wherever, sleep in the truck.
Yeah, it's great. I love it, man. I've been doing it for, I don't know, 3 years now, and it's been. I actually did it before that. I used to do it in the back of my Cherokee, and then the truck for the last 3 years. But I absolutely love it. So that buck ends up being in the Tether 10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
And for people who don't know what that is, I think that's people can submit their story with a picture of their buck. And then I think there's a voting process, I think, and they get.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they choose or if they must vote with it. I don't really know how it works, but yeah, pretty much anybody can write in any buck, and some type of voting process happens, and they choose from that.
That's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah, it was funny. I was I'd kind of like forgotten that I had written into it. And I was at the gym and I was just kind of scrolling through Instagram and I saw a picture of myself and I was like, oh, it must be recommending like do a post with this picture. I was like, tethered. I was like, why am I there? I was like, oh, wow. I totally forgot about that, but it was awesome. Yeah, I was like really pumped up about it. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
So I heard you just say something about an antelope hunt too.
Mhm.
So was that 20, what year was that you did that?
I hunted antelope in Nebraska last year and 3 years ago. And that hunt's a blast. That's where I've gotten into like the spot and stalk. And that's changed a lot for me too, because I've always just been strictly a whitetail hunter.
Yep.
And again, I just bought an antelope tag on a whim. And then I was like, well, I guess I'm going antelope hunting now. I drove out there. I don't think I had ever even seen an antelope before. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just knew there was a big chunk of public land. I try before I go into an area, I try to reach out to biologists, game warden, whatever type of DNR they have. Sometimes I'll write letters to locals and just be like, hey, what's going on out there? Like, are there actually antelope or am I wasting my time coming out there? And I showed up and there were antelope everywhere. I think I missed one the first trip, got close a couple times, but it's so much fun. Like it's really early season. It's just like blazing hot out there. It's like 100 degrees. The terrain is zero cover, just about as flat as a football field, and antelope are the most sketched out animals I've ever seen in my life. Like that they were so in my head that when I was driving down the road, I'd be afraid to like look at them because I thought they knew I was hunting them and start running away. But yeah, that was my first spot and stalk experience, and that's changed a lot for me. Now I'm trying to put in for muley tags and get into the elk game, which is it's tough as a person. I haven't done an elk hunt yet. One, because I'm trying to build up some points to be able to do it. Two, if I went on an elk hunt and was fortunate enough to kill one, I would be in for it
Yeah.
to try and get it out of there. But this year I drew a muley tag for New Mexico, and then I'm going back out to that Montana property again. So I got a couple Western things I'll be doing this year.
So are you hunting by yourself most of these trips?
Most of the time. So in Ohio, we have a group with a few guys from work, and my brother comes down there as well. That's usually about a week long trip that we all get down there. But outside of that, primarily solo. I'm mostly out there by myself.
And that's and I don't know how to say this without sounding like offensive to anybody else, and it's not meant to be. There's a difference between how you hunt and how you pour yourself into it, and I
Mhm.
imagine than how other people do.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and I think like I found that with myself too. It was really hard to find people who would hunt the same style that I did, and that doesn't mean actually
Mhm.
like as I think about that, it doesn't mean that the people that I used to hunt with were not as effective as me. They were actually better than me at hunting. But
Yeah,
I liked the grinding. I liked the going far.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if I'm not actually in some kind of like pain, I'm not
Mhm.
enjoying it. It's got to be
Yeah,
difficult
it's
for
just
me.
different goals, different approach. Like I'm not good enough to be able to just pick a spot like that. It takes me 16 sits and like the my Ohio buck I killed last year took me. I was just looking at. I took a picture of my watch. It took me 6 hours and 17 minutes to drag it out of the woods because I was back there by myself. So but that's where I find fulfillment.
Yeah.
Like I could save up money and buy a lease somewhere and shoot a really good buck, but it wouldn't. And there's nothing wrong with that style. But like you said, I find fulfillment through the challenge, the struggle, the mental grind. It's day 9 and you don't even ever want to hunt again, but you still go tomorrow. And I find often those are the days that you kill. It's
Yeah.
when you're it's right on the other side of quit. It's like just one more day, just one more hunt, just get up one more time, just hunt tomorrow night. I trick myself when I really get down to grind time. I'll say, all right, I'm just going to hunt tomorrow morning. And then I get out there, but I'll still pack food for the day. And then I'll sit all day. And then when I'm hunting public, I'll leave my bow out in the tree. So then it's like, all right, well, now I have to
I
go
have to go
back.
back. Yep.
I'll play little tricks on myself to like force myself just one more day, one more sit, one more hunt. When you chip away, that for me, that's where I find success and just that grind.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you always have that, or did you discover that at some point?
I don't think I always had it. Like, I think it's been 8 or 9 years now. I lost 120 pounds in the course of like a year. So when I was younger, I was like super overweight. That was a big turning point in my life. And I think that's where I kind of learned that skill. Like the way I lost the weight is I just ran 3 miles every day for a year with no exceptions. Sick, snow, rain, rolled ankle, just go. And I would imagine it probably stems somewhere from that process.
I'm so interested because I think, with myself, I didn't always have it either. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember like the turning point for me when it happened. But I
Mm-hmm.
do know there's been times where I've gotten into the comfort zone. Even let's talk about weight, like where I've actually gotten overweight. And then there's this like switch in my mind, and I want to figure that switch moment out so I can repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
But once that switch happens, very similar, like,
Yeah.
man, it's like almost like a machine that I'm just going after the goal,
Yeah.
and I won't stop until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've just really, like I said, if I'm not in some kind of pain, then I feel like I'm not doing,
Yeah. Like it's not
I'm,
enough. You're
yeah, I'm
not
not
earning
doing
it
it.
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Instagram has been a really good avenue for me to meet guys like you and other people. So
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
now I've got this squad of guys who are all
Mhm.
like-minded
Yeah.
and are doing the same things, which has been a blast, man. It's been really
Yeah.
fun.
The world, it's so weird. Like the community of public land hunting and in the style of, being mobile, and then it gets smaller. Like, okay, these guys are camping in their trucks.
Yeah.
It's really cool to be able to network with people and just talk. There's a lot more like-minded people out there than you would be able to know about in absence of social media.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the guys that are down in Ohio, do they hunt similar to you? Are they grinding it out there and going far back
Mhm.
and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. I hunt with some really good hunters down there, and it's cool because we all have our own styles. Like one of the guys, I feel like he's just incredible at reading the woods, and then
Yeah.
the other guy is just super patient, and he'll just sit forever and just not complain. And everybody finds success through their own, different avenues, and I try and take a little bit from all that. Everybody has their strong suits, and it's when you can look to the people around you and, okay, what's this guy doing really well that I'm not doing? Because that the mental game for me is huge. Because
Yeah.
when I was younger, playing hockey or failing at hunting, I would get so pissed if,
Yeah.
I lost the hockey game or I missed the buck. And, I'm still not great at it. It's hard when you're just grinding it out to keep your head in the game. You get frustrated, you get burnt out, you get tired, you get mad. But if you can switch that and learn to just enjoy the process, and I missed this buck because I wasn't supposed to get that one. It's supposed to be this one instead. And the last couple of years, there's been 2 times I've missed a buck, and then a little while later, I shot one way bigger than it. So I've been working to shift my mentality from this is a failure to, okay, this is a lesson, and get more into that process. And okay, it sucks right now, but it will make it better when I'm successful, instead of just like, this sucks and throw in the towel, quit, go home.
Yeah. Like you wrote something here, like I'm trying to find it again here, but essentially says like you like, yeah, you've become a better man because of
Yeah.
hunting, of this
Yeah.
process.
It applies to life. I mean, life, life and hunting, it's all just different avenues of the same stuff. I mean, we're all just trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And for me, I find that through struggle. You break yourself down, figure out what can I actually do. And then the cool thing about hunting is you can see measurable results, which is,
Yeah.
I put in all this time. I made all these trips scouting. I've sat a million times. I'm whooped. I want to quit. I go again. And then you get one and you can feel that it's palpable success. And, when you can learn these lessons through a sport or fitness or hunting, that makes you a better person when you you learn that and you go, okay, I can do this in my life too to be a better person.
Yeah. And I've seen that's what I was trying to say a little bit earlier is where I think guys might get it wrong sometime is when they're hanging their hat on the success piece for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about that buck that they killed last year, the year before, just nonstop. I think they're missing the process part of it. You know what I mean? And so what I noticed for me is like when I finally started hitting my goal, what I thought was my goal, which was to kill a big buck, I realized it needs to be something more because that lasts for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, I killed it. Now what? And
Yeah.
I would try to.
Especially solo. I mean, hunting solo, once you get that deer, you get to it and it's incredible and there's the rush. And I always try to take a moment to really sit there and go, okay,
Yeah,
I did this. But the fun factor goes away real fast when your buddies aren't there and you're 2 miles deep and it it the moment is very important, but people say this all the time. It's trust the process.
yeah,
Like learn to enjoy the struggle. And like that's the stuff that lasts.
it is. It really is. The trophy is just an empty trophy. I say it all the time.
Mhm.
If you don't have, if you can't enjoy the process and the struggle, and that's the part that's going to really affect your whole life. So there is a difference between just going out and hunting and shooting and
Mhm.
what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that shapes you as a human being and makes you
Yeah.
a better version of yourself, you know?
Yeah. This is hunting is just for me personally, it's a very different thing than a recreational experience. Like I don't go a day without thinking about it, visualizing the success, setting the intention of like I want to get a buck or I'm scrolling on Onyx or just reflecting on, you know, the feelings of hunts I've been on. It's an all encompassing thing in my life. And I don't know if it's an addiction or what it is, but you know, for me, it's like hunting is like a spiritual path.
Yeah.
Like it's an incredible thing when you really get into it. I mean, you're out in nature. It can be about as raw as life can get. It's cool. I mean, it's changed who I am a ton.
Yeah. I can say the same thing.
Mhm.
So you're in Ohio. Are we in the hills of Ohio? Is
Yeah. Yep.
so in Michigan, if you're hunting southern Michigan, or if you're up north, is it flatland or hilly where you're
Yeah.
hunting? Yeah, yeah.
Flat. Yep.
So you show up in the hills and
Oh man.
but you fall in love with them, right?
Immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ohio's flat till it's not. And then when you see the not flatness coming for the first time, you're just like, what? What am I doing? And like I said, I had uh, two buddies who had been hunting down there for a long time. They've been really successful down there. And they were showing me Onyx and things to look for and telling me about these scrapes and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go out and do it. So I picked an area on the map and I just hunted the heck out of it for a week until it worked. And yeah, the hills, there's just so much that goes into that compared to flatland. I mean,
Yeah.
flatland has a lot of intricacies and can be more difficult to hunt, I think, because it's hard to find that X where you need to be. It's all a continual game that I'm always trying to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I'd love to have you back on to like maybe talk through some of the hill tactics.
Yeah, of course.
We're pretty deep into the conversation already to make that switch because
Yeah.
that's a long conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
It's
for
an
sure
endless conversation.
it is. It really
Yeah.
is.
Mm.
But I find myself gravitating to the hills too. And I haven't hunted those size of hills yet. In fact, mine are way smaller. But those are almost mountains to me when I drive through
Oh
Ohio
yeah.
down there. I'm like, these are
Yeah,
like
they're
mountains. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
incredible.
What hills have you hunted in?
So, Illinois. So it's like,
Oh, okay. Well, Southern Illinois, that gets really down there, right?
yeah, it's right before that. So it's not quite the
Like
big one.
rolling, kind of.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm thinking probably 200 feet in elevation, 300
Okay. Yeah.
from the bottom to the top. So, I mean, very small compared to what you're doing.
Okay.
But that's enough for me, though. I mean, I'm having a ton of fun with it.
Yeah.
They're probably maybe a little bit bigger than that, actually. I'm probably thinking more more around 300-400 feet probably.
Yeah. Okay.
But I've had a lot of success in it too, and I love it. I really do. And coming from flatland to that, it's a whole new game. And
There's so many more elements that come into the picture. It's you can spend a lifetime trying to figure out.
yeah,
I don't feel like I'll ever get it.
no, no, dude. I've had so many like, I've tried to do you talked about going on top, and it's funny. Like when I first got to where I was going, I was doing the side hill game, and where I was at, all the action was on the top, and I actually had, and like, so what you think, like, I think you say it
Yeah.
here, like Mother Nature's just going to tell you, no, it's something different, and
Yeah.
you have to be able to shift to wherever you're at. But and then last year it was the side, it was the side game. I'm on the side of the hills, and it wasn't the top.
Yeah. I found that I don't really hunt the bottoms, but there's people who have success in the bottoms.
Mhm.
And for me, my theory is just the deer are where the deer are,
Yeah.
and you go there. Sometimes it's the lower third, sometimes it's the top because there's a bunch of cover up there.
Yep.
Sometimes it's the side hill because a certain prevailing wind is coming from a bedding area or a clear cut. It's just you just have to read the hills and walk a lot and follow deer trail and read sign and just kind of think like a deer type of thing, or just walk where it feels like where a deer would walk. And it's just picking stuff apart. They go where they want to go.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Same trip with these guys last week. We came across a scrape, and I'm not hunting this area. I'm just scouting with a friend of mine, and he's telling me about how he had some bucks come in on this scrape, and I'm looking around. I'm going, why is this scrape here?
Yeah.
And he's like, I mean, it shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Like it just
Yeah.
and I'm looking all around. He's like, I don't know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It shouldn't be here.
Mm.
And he's like, well, it is, and I'm hunting where the deer are at.
Yeah.
And that's been eating me up since I left there. I've been trying to figure out why that scrape is
Why?
there, and I
Yeah.
cannot figure out why it is.
Yeah.
But it's size of a card hood, and it gets
Oh
hit
yeah.
all the
Yep.
time.
Yeah.
And
So
it's one of
there's
those,
something. Yeah, there's something
yeah,
there or in the vicinity. And yeah, it's it's just an endless game of trying to figure out. But that's why it's fun. It's because like you never really get. I mean, if you went out one year, like I got it, it wouldn't be that great.
yeah, oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Mm.
So, what is your process? So, you're hunting Ohio. Are you doing like postseason scouting, preseason
Yeah.
scouting?
Yep. So my scouting game has upped more and more every year. This year I've been down there quite a bit. I think I've been down 4 or 5 times so far. It always starts with map scouting. I used to be very specific of like I want to check this point or I want to check this saddle. I've changed that to I want to check this area, and I'll
Yes.
pick those areas based on a lot of things: clear cuts, what the vegetation looks like, steepness, how the ridges come together, remoteness, access. And I'll pick an area and then I'll go into it and then I'll walk the tops and then I'll try and cut deer trails and see where that leads me. And the areas are usually like a multiple trip of just, I'll pick something from the sky on e-scouting and I'll have my reasons for it. And then I'll do a first trip and I'll kind of shrink that down a little bit. And I'll go, okay, I'm starting to get some more general ideas of where I think I need to be. And it's just refining. And then you shrink down to like, okay, now I got these 3 things and they could be different setups for different times of day or maybe the wind or access. And it's just like a refining process, I would say. And most of it is boots on the ground.
Mhm.
Once I pick the area, it's just about walking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a little bit, I do the same thing. I used to do the like, hey, here are the pens that I'm going to go to. And then
And then you
what
get to them and it looks terrible.
yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
oh no.
And I spent hours, like putting it in 3D, rotating the map on this one little
Oh
dot, like,
yeah.
and I get there and it's junk. But it's also the other thing that you said is like, I'm going to hunt where the deer are too. And sometimes the deer are just in places that I just didn't, they
Yeah.
shouldn't be there
A
sometimes. And
lot of
so,
times the best spots are never the pin, never the
yeah,
pins you have on the map. It's when you're walking and you're like, oh, what's that? And you go check it out. You follow it and you're like, oh, what's this? And that's where the good stuff seems to happen is just reading the terrain, walking, following the sign, reading the sign, seeing where it takes you, backtracking.
Yeah.
It's all deer. Deer are random to a degree, but they're also pretty specific.
Yeah.
They do stuff. It's just like in your life, you take a certain path to work, and you you have your foods that you tend to like to eat, and you have your bed in one place, but sometimes you sleep in your truck, and that might be
Yeah.
over there. But it's predictably unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think once you get there, you like on some of these spots where you go, hey, the deer shouldn't be over here, but they are. Usually you can find out why they are. Like, oh, okay. There's a main trail that comes through here and access is coming off the top. So of course they're moving over
Yeah.
this way. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the hills, that seems to rotate a lot. Something could be on fire one year, and you go back and you don't see anything, and that
Yeah.
could be pressure or a new clear cut, or the mass crop changed, and didn't produce, or the ag field down below is now a bean instead of a corn. It's a rotating thing.
Yep. Yeah. So are you hunting the same piece year after year? Or you
Yeah, for the
yeah.
for the most part, it's a pretty much in the same section.
Yep. Yeah. That's got to be pretty nice. I wish I would there's a side of me that wishes I would do that. I bounce. I'll hunt a piece maybe 2 years,
Okay.
and then I'm just always looking for the adventure. And then
Yeah.
I'm heading out to
Yeah.
the next spot.
Yeah.
But I do sit back and reflect and go, man, I think I would learn more if I would stick around for a couple more years and just really break down a piece and get a firm understanding.
Yeah.
Because then you can take that when you go somewhere else and just look to
Mhm.
duplicate it. You know,
Yeah,
so,
a lot of the pieces in Southern Ohio are pretty big too. So I'll have I'm always checking different areas, and I'm always refining different areas, and that's a multiple year process. Would I love to go into a new area and kill a giant buck the first time? Yeah, that'd be great. But a lot of times it's you scout it, maybe you just run cameras for a year and you go back and you see what they showed you, or maybe you hunted it a couple times and you realize, okay, they're over here. I'm kind of close, but they're over here. And it's that refining process. And oftentimes that's not through a single year.
no, I don't think so. So you're running cameras. What's your camera game look like?
I run quite a bit of cell cameras. I have some standard cameras for some of those just kind of satellite new spots. I don't like burning cell cameras, especially if there isn't service. I
Yeah.
find that with the cell cameras, even if you put it in an area where it's like one bar, but it's kind of sketchy, it just kills your cell cam.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like a 6 hour drive to get down there. So if I'm burning a cell cam that's not going to work, I learned through failures and lessons
Yeah.
don't do that. So most of my cameras you can find usually over some form of community scrape. Not so much on trails, but I would say that's more of a me thing because I can never be confident enough in a trail. I'll get somewhere. I'm like,
Yeah.
the deer walk here, but I'm really far and I don't want to put this camera on a trail and get 3 pictures in a year. The For me, the scrapes provide a lot of inventory for the area. And in the past, my approach has always been, for the most part, sit the scrape. I'm trying to not work away from it as if I don't want to do it, but start to be more tactical of hunting the scrape of, okay, maybe I'm 200 yards off it because there's this crossing or there's this thing over here that I really like. Because when you find a true community scrape, like the one you were saying, when you find it, it's the
Mm.
giant looking branch, it's the car hood scrape. They can produce, but your access needs to be flawless and your setup needs to be flawless because the truly mature bucks are going to approach that in a very specific, meticulous way. And I got to see that for the first time with the buck I killed last year.
Yeah.
But I wish I would have aged the buck. My brother and I talked about that a couple times. Like, oh, we should have sent it a 2. I know he was at least 4.5. I would assume he was probably older though, maybe 5, maybe 6. I don't know. I'm not the guy who's great at scoring deer, but that was big for me. Just watching that buck was killed over a community scrape, but the access was money. The wind was money. The thermals were money. And I look back and I look at a lot of the scrapes that I've hunted, and I'm sure there were a lot of bucks that went upwind or up thermal to check that. There's like, okay, there's a dude chilling there right now. I'm not going in there. So I'm trying to up my percentage by backing off that. And that's more hard to do because it's really hard when I hunt Ohio or really anything in a rut style hunt. I'm sitting all day
Yeah.
and I have a hard time being confident in a setup when I'm not on hot sign. That's really hard for me. You know, I can set up, I can sit for 4 hours, and then that 4 hours goes by, and it's like, you know, the big scrape or the big signpost rub is like the bait pile, and you want to sit right on top of it because you're like, I know if they come here, I'm getting the shot at it. But oftentimes, if you can learn how to set up off of it, your success will actually go up because it's my belief that the truly mature deer check those in very specific ways.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting on it, it can be tough to be in the game. You might see them, you might hear them blowing, but if you can back off and figure out how they're, you know, doing that check, I think your odds are going to be a little higher if you're after like a mature buck.
Yeah, and in the rut, it's really interesting too when you talk about sign because the hot sign really is the does. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so you actually could have hot physical sign on the ground, like a scrape that's been tore up or, you know, some new rubs. But if there's no does and heat in that area, those bucks are moving on, you
Yeah.
know. And so that's tough, I think. I was thinking about that when I watched your video because it looked like big woods to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's big ones out there.
And I tend to hunt like what I would call a mix of like medium woods and ag. So I've got ag really close to me. I can get to it really quick. And so, that creates more funnels. It creates more pinch points and bedding areas are, I think, a little bit in farm country, a little bit easier to identify. And so so I can sit confidently all day there because I know I'm downwind of bedding.
You're in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in it. Yeah.
Big woods bedding can be anywhere and it's really funky. So like I was thinking about that with your hunt actually. I'm sitting there going, could I sit there and do an all day sit in big woods?
Mhm.
I think the scrape would make me feel more confident, even though it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be hitting that scrape because they're going to be looking for does.
Yeah. The scrapes are the time that a mature buck will hit a scrape in daylight is also very dependent. In I'm sure everywhere, but at least in the hill country of Ohio where I'm hunting, I find it's kind of that, you know, the scrape week people talk about, that last week of October, first couple of days in November. And then the buck I killed last year, and this is just through trail camera data, starting to notice that again, the hunting theory, you know, they have that scrape week where the bucks are starting to get fired up, the does are starting to come into heat late October, early November. The daylight scrape activity that I've seen, you know, November 5th to 13th, I don't really see much of anything. I'm seeing a lot of scrapes die, and I don't know if it's because the bucks are locked down. I don't know if it's because they've given up on them and they're just fully seeking and chasing. But once that first round of breeding seems to come to an end, they come back to them.
Yes.
And the really big bucks, November 14th to 20th or something like that, that's when I tend to see the most daylight mature bucks on cameras. Because again, the mature bucks know where the does are at. That they've known where they're at for years because they've lived for a while. And they also know how to avoid pressure. So they're a little more they're a little more tactical with their checks and showing themselves in daylight. The buck that I killed last year had never been on that camera before for a whole year, but he knew to be there on that specific day, and there were does bedding in the vicinity.
Yeah, yeah. What was the date that you killed him?
I think it was November 13th, I believe.
Yep. Okay. I've had a sneaking suspicion. I mentioned it a couple times in two different podcasts where I've said I've just never really experienced like this crazy rut action from like November. Usually I'll get out there about the 3rd or 4th and I'm there till the 10th, 11th or so. And I mean, I get action, you know, it's not like it's dead, but it's not like what you have in your mind with like last year, or no, 2 years ago, I sat and watched a buck bed 70 yards behind me all day long, you
Mhm.
know, and they are making the rounds, but they're not making them in as far, like he knows where those does are. My theory wasn't just like you just said, and I don't know if it's so much a theory because I've heard other really experienced hunters talk about it, is that those older mature bucks now are moving off of that. You'll start to see them wander further in that later part of November. So this year I'm actually switching one of my trips around so I can hunt later and
Cool.
just
Yeah.
and see what it's like. But so that scrape, did you say you had him on, you've never had him on camera before, but did he hit that on camera like the day before or anything like that? Or was that the first?
That, my brother was running a camera on that scrape, and that buck had never. There were a lot of other bucks that were regular, and there were two mature ones that were pretty regular. But this buck, he was a roamer. But he knew the scrape. I mean, I was pretty much between two very high knobs on a side hill, big community scrape. It was a north wind, so it was blowing over. I was below a saddle,
Mhm.
so it's a north wind blowing over the saddle down to the scrape, and my access was up the cut from the bottom. So it was flawless. I was able to come up with the night thermals dropping, the prevailing day winds kicked up, and I was always downhill the scrape. But I heard him first on off to my left on right on top of the knob. He was coming around the hill. And he knew exactly, I mean, he knew the scrape was there. His intention was to go there the entire time. He came around, he staged above the saddle for probably 3 minutes and just looked, saw if
Yeah.
anything was not right. The whole time he walked in, he was on edge. I mean, I drew back when he came behind a tree and, that kind of dead silent warning thing. I mean, it's not that he was, I don't think he was on edge. He was just mature and they just have a different way that they move. And that was the first time I had seen that before. But he came right into the scrape. I mean, he was there for a reason on that day,
Hmm.
and it was
Yeah.
that scrape. And he knew
He,
it was there.
he was working it up too. I mean, he came in to work it up and
Oh yeah, he was fired up. Yeah, I was at full draw for like 2 minutes, just losing my mind. And after like a minute, you're just talking to yourself like, you can't let the bow down. It's all this has led up to this. At one point, he looked through because the canopy was down. He looked through the scrape tree and he was looking right at me. And I was like panic mode, like, should I force this shot or whatever? And of course he comes around the tree and comes right at me type of deal. And yeah, he was there for a reason on that day. And that lines up to what we're talking about. It's those mature bucks doing those meticulous, methodical checks on specific areas. And oftentimes that's accompanied by those good community scrapes.
yeah. I did notice like he did seem aware of his surroundings when he came in. Is there pressure where you're at, or are you by yourself way in the back
No,
there?
there's a lot of there's a lot of pressure in the woods in general. I was
Hmm.
far back into those woods, and I don't think anybody had been back into that area. But that buck, being however old he was, has been exposed to pressure for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like a panic. I mean, everybody should go watch that video. It's pretty cool, actually. It wasn't like this crazy panic. I mean, he was aware, but he wasn't on edge. Like I agree with you on
Yeah,
that.
just methodical, careful.
Yep. Even when he saw you, he didn't for sure know who you were, like what was going
Yeah,
on there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was awesome. And then you had to drag him all the way out.
Oh, it was rough. Yeah, I got racked from that drag out. So I shot him in the morning, and it was the frontal shot. I wasn't sure, and I saw him run off. In hindsight, I did hear him crash, but that's something I need to remember through a lesson of really take that time to like chill out, pay attention to what's going on. But I was alone. I was like 2.5 miles back. I went back later in the day and got him all the way out. I had a deer car. I should have packed in hindsight, but I had never done it before. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not ruining this hide because
Yeah.
I knew I was going to butcher it on the first go. But yeah, the cart was breaking. I lost it off the side of a hill and taking the deer on. He was a big buck. I'm sure he was over 200 pounds once he was dressed. Taking him on the cart and off the cart. By the time I was to the truck, I was just locked up. I was hypothermic because the temps dropped off and I just had a base layer on. I was sweating the whole time.
Uh-huh.
So I ended up dropping the deer off to the butcher that night. The guy was really cool. He met me out at like it was like 2:30 in the morning. He came out and got the deer for me. And I wasn't staying in the truck at that time because the temps were pretty cold. I wanted to be able to dry my gear and stuff. And got back to the hotel like 3 in the morning, just soaked in this tub of like the crappiest hotel ever. But I was like, I have to do this to live right now. But
Yeah.
but again, it's like it's the struggle. It's those memories. Like that buck means so much more to me because of all the suck that
Yeah.
accompanied it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like you totally dread it before you do it, and then when you're done, it's like
Mhm.
you're grateful because it adds to the story and the adventure of the whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something to remind ourselves like in the future because you get in those moments of you're grinding it out or the drag is really terrible or you missed the buck or you're down in the dumps about whatever, but it's like that's actually the good stuff. And
It
if you can
is.
remember that in the moment, you're going to be even more effective because then you're unfazed by the suck
Yeah.
because it like we said it's that it's the momentary success at the end that it makes it all worth it. But then you look back and it was the grind that was important. So if you can remember that in that moment of this is terrible, it's that mentality shift, and I think you'd be a lot more effective, or I can be a lot more effective if I'm able to do that.
I wish I could bottle that up and get it out to people because like it's so hard to like really get someone to feel what we're saying about that. Like,
Yeah.
especially with like, and I sound like a broken record all the time. Social media has been one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me, which is weird because
Mhm.
you can say a lot of negative things about it.
Yeah.
I,
It's
I've
how you use it.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
There's awesome people in the world.
There
Like
is.
the world is really cool and people are pretty awesome. And it's like, you know, it's not all that bad.
No, no. And but what I've noticed though is like there's this thing about like just getting to the end because we want to put our fingerprint out there, right? We want someone to
Mhm.
see us. And that's not bad. Like that we're built that way.
Yeah.
Depends on how whatever you think if we just were dropped here by aliens or come out of the water or for me I'm a
Yeah.
faith guy. I
Mhm.
believe that like we're built for community. So I'm not trying to dog anybody when I say like, hey, I get why you want to get this picture with this buck so you can put it out there so people will notice you so you can
It's the
build.
ego. It's like what you said earlier.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the ego within that wants to go, look at what I did.
Yeah. And only the people who've actually done that and lived through that then go, yeah, that's not what I thought it was going to be. And so everybody else who's trying to get there, just enjoy what you're in right now because
Yeah.
this is actually like you don't need to like, of course I want you to be successful and get a big buck. We all want it.
Mhm.
But man, enjoy the process right now because that is the most fun and rewarding piece of this whole damn thing.
Yeah. I think
And
when you do it for the process too, that's where success comes. If you're just
yeah,
worried about just kill the buck, so you're revered as the big buck killer, you might have a really hard time killing bucks
so
because you're
true.
you're trying to be there now when in the progression of hunting in life, I don't know that there's not really a destination. It's the progression. You're trying to get there the whole time. And it it it's a continual process.
Yeah.
We'll think back to who we are as people, hunters right now in 5 years, and you go, "Oh, I didn't really know anything." But
Yeah.
right now, we think we know stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a continual process.
Yeah. It's so true, man. So true. Yeah. And I used to be that guy who, and I remember when people who were successful would tell me, Matt, like, stop trying to force it because if you do, you're not actually going to kill. Or if you do, you won't know how to do it again. And when I finally let go, it's amazing how I started to kill more bucks,
Yeah,
and that's something that I don't know if you can really teach for people to understand that because it's the reply is, well, that's easy for you to say. You have, a lot of nice bucks behind you on the wall. And it's like, yeah, but it's the truth. Like if you got it, when you start to enjoy the process, the bucks will end up on your wall. That's just
yeah,
how it is,
yeah. It's the mentality shift, and I always try and remind myself and fall into the category of like stuff happens for a reason.
Hmm.
And whether that's, again, we talk about how the lessons of hunting overlap in life. Here we're talking about hunting. So you talk about, okay, I missed the one buck, but I got the other ones instead of it. Or I went to this spot and there was a dude there, but then I went over here and I killed this buck. Or
Yeah.
maybe I didn't get a buck for a whole year. All right, well, now your fire's lit and that led you to this other thing. So
Yeah.
it's the process, it's the pursuit. And when you can look at the failures or hiccups in the road as it's just leading to the next thing,
Hmm.
that's that will bring you to what that thing is.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's letting go. It's just allowing. You got to allow that to happen.
So hard to do. So hard
It's
to
tough.
do.
Yeah. And I even say that, like, I don't have it figured out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go hunting this year and I'm going to be pissed at some point. I'm going to be frustrated. But that's, again, like, it's the process.
It is. Yeah. So I should have asked this a little bit earlier when we were talking about the hunting over there in Ohio. Are you going during the rut or do you hunt all year round? I mean, do you have a phase style where I come in early season, mid?
So all my bucks I've killed in Ohio have been what you would consider the rut. The one I killed a couple years ago, probably the tail end of the rut, but you could argue there was still rut activity. That's something I'm working on, is the early season.
Mm-hmm.
The early season, I think that if you can figure it out, you can probably be more effective. I killed a Michigan public land buck 3 or 4 years ago off a theory, like we talked about. I was walking in and I saw two very specific rubs that looked very fresh in a very specific inside corner where it all made sense. And I assumed, well, maybe some type of deer is bedding back there. Well, a deer was bedding back there, and I ended up shooting one. And that kind of sparked a thing with the early season of deer are more predictable. I believe that deer are more predictable in the early season. It can be harder to get in on them. And for me personally, it can be harder to find the motivation when it's like 90
Yeah.
and you're getting covered in ticks. But one of my goals for this year is to try to expand the clock of the season back to try and find some success in that early October category. Because it's tough. It's tough. But
Real
I
tough.
think your approach probably needs to change a little bit. Obviously, the the setups you'll do would probably look different. At least for me, would look a little different than a rut setup. But that's a goal for this year. I've been trying to find more beds. I've been trying to find more setups that make sense for the early season because it's all fun and they
Yeah.
all offer different experiences. And with the truck camping aspect, it's great when it only gets down to like 55 at night. You're all
Yeah.
cozy back and it's going to be 80 tomorrow.
Yeah. So with the early season stuff that I found, I agree with you. I think you can be more successful. Time, time is the hard part there. Like I feel like if you don't have a lot of time, the rut is the time to do it because the rut is one of those like basic principle type of plans. You can sit down when a bedding, you can get into a pinch, and if you have like some of those superpowers that your guys were you have down in Ohio, where one guy's real patient, right? He can sit in a pinch spot, sit there for 10 days, and he's going to get a shot at a buck. You can move around in the rut without messing too much stuff up, because the buck that might have caught your track today isn't going to be there tomorrow, and a different one's going to come through.
Yeah.
To hunt that early season, you've got to put that time in and
It's
know.
intricate.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
intricate. Yeah.
So do you have that type of time? Does your job allow you to have that much vacation to be able to?
Yeah, my schedule's pretty flexible. I work 24-hour shifts, so it turns out to about 9, 10 days a month.
Okay.
We're allowed to trade shifts and stuff. So you can usually catch me taking all of November off and probably half of October also. Every 5 days I get 4 days off as well. So I'm taking off whenever I can, whether that's scouting and more specifically during the season. Ohio's 6 hours away from me where I hunt, but I love driving. I love
Yeah,
camping in the
so do
truck.
I.
My long-term goal is to get good enough to where it doesn't take me a whole season in Ohio because I've hunted Pennsylvania one time during it was a rifle hunt,
Mm.
and that place is awesome too. And my goal is to hopefully be good enough one day where I can get a buck here and then go over there. But I have that plan every year. It never works. I find
Yeah.
myself, you know, day 15 just rotting in the tree. Like, all right, well, let's get one buck this year. Don't be so lofty. Maybe next time.
I don't know. This year I'm setting some crazy goals, man, just
It's good
because
to have them. Yeah, it's good to have them.
yeah, I believe in like manifesting stuff too, man. Like I think if
It's
you
real. Yeah,
it
it's
is
real.
real. Yep.
Yeah.
And so this year I've decided that yeah, I'm going for 3 in 3 states. And but who knows what Mother Nature's gonna do
Yeah.
for me. We'll see.
That skill is very important though. Like the ability to set an intention and just say, I'm going to do this and just feel the feeling of when it happens, what that will be like. And you get there doing that.
Dude, I nerd out on that stuff. I've got vision boards and
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
That's good.
my screen on my phone is a vision board. So every time I look at it, there's like 6 or 7 different things on there that,
That's cool.
I'm focused on. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
I want to go back a little bit. There was a little nugget of, I think, like a teachable moment there. You said that you walked in on that Michigan public land buck and you saw
Mhm.
those 2 fresh scrapes and you said, or excuse me, rubs.
Yeah.
And you're like, there could be something bedded back there.
Yeah.
I think guys who are looking to up their game and get more consistency or maybe even get that first big buck on the wall,
Mhm.
something to take away is you should not be sitting unless you have a hypothesis for why you're there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and it needs to be more than looks like a good spot.
Mhm.
That's what I used to do. Walk out and be like, this looks
Yeah.
like
Seems good.
seems
Seems
good.
fine.
I'll set up here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, why are you setting up there? And you may be completely wrong, but I find myself when I have those like moments where I'm trying to, build a hypothesis of why I'm sitting there. It may not turn out the way I thought, but guess what? Like it presents an opportunity where a different buck walks by from a different direction, and I actually end
Yeah.
up harvesting that way. So, you know, the takeaway is again is like don't set up unless you have a reason for setting up there,
Mhm.
and so that, I mean, I see that a lot. Hey, looks like there might be a buck over there, and guys
Yeah.
do it, and they end up killing.
And just trust your gut. And you're going to mostly be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, if we
So,
were wrong all the time, everybody would just hunt one time, shoot a buck, call it a season. Like you're you're gonna mostly be wrong. I don't, it's there's I don't know, you shoot at a basket enough times, it's gonna go in eventually.
yeah.
So it's but through the wrong. So say I would have set up on those rubs and the buck wasn't there because maybe he was pushed back and I didn't get into the good stuff yet. Well, then you hunt something like that and you realize don't let it end there. Get
Yeah.
down, look at the rubs, and go, okay, that's a old. This rub is not that fresh.
Yeah.
Why is he not here right now? Don't let the I didn't see a deer end right there. Think about it. Look back. What was the wind doing? Get down and look at the sign that you thought
Mhm.
was so great. See if there's tread. Continually break it down. That might be what gets you to the next step. You realize, okay, now I kind of know what this looks like. I need to push past this next time. I need to get into that better stuff next time.
Yeah. I started doing that, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. I used to have this thing in my mind where it's like, I can't go into the thick stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
sacred. I'm not supposed to do that. That's sacred. And I remember standing at the edge of it one time and like, okay, that's where I normally would set up. I don't ever kill deer, like,
Yep.
and I'm like, I'm just gonna go. And I take a step in and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, haven't wrecked anything yet. And I just started moving forward until I did bump deer. And I went, holy cow. Like I'm so far out of the game back
Oh
there.
yeah. Yeah.
Or even when I first walked in, I was still so far out of the game.
Yeah.
The bumping the deer, the mistake, if you want to call it that, is
Mhm.
actually the thing that opened up
Yeah.
almost all of my success after that. I realized, okay, there are levels to aggression, and I can go a lot farther than what I thought I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
So go make the mistake. Just like you said, get down, look at it, press yourself a little bit, make room in your plan to, you know, go to a spot that maybe you don't always go to and see how far you can go before you blow it up, like
Yeah.
Look
Yeah.
for learning moments every time you're in the woods.
And try new stuff too. Like,
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of setups where I'm just like, I don't know, this just seems right. It's
Yeah.
that gut, that intuition or that gut feeling. And I sat in a lot of those spots and didn't see anything.
Yeah.
But maybe you sit. It's easy to fall into the trap of the information that's out there. You know,
Yeah.
hunt the scrape, hunt the signpost rub, sit in the pinch, try different stuff. And I try and take knowledge from, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I'm
Mhm.
always watching YouTube videos. I'm reading stuff. Try and take stuff from everybody and formulate your own thing. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to not see a deer.
Yeah.
Sit the side hill trail that just, I don't know, seemed right to you because whatever you're looking at.
Hmm.
If you're out there and you formulate a theory and it seems right, just do it. And if you don't see a deer, you don't see a deer. Then you
Yeah.
learned, okay, the deer, this is not the deer spot right
Yeah.
here. This is just, whatever.
Yeah. I find that with scouting too, is like, you can go into a spot you think it's going to be money and then it's crap. And you can turn around and walk out with a bad attitude, or you can go, cool, got that off the list, not going to go there,
Yeah.
and moving on to a new piece. It's just constantly learning and,
Yeah.
writing things off and writing things in when they work.
And that, like we talked about earlier, as you start to figure out what is a good spot, you actually spend more time finding terrible spots. So I used to go out in the woods and like I said, this is great and that's great. And I found all this sign. Most of the time I spend now is this is decent or this is okay or this is terrible. I could walk a whole day and then you find it, you get that feeling, you find the sign, there's the scrape, okay, and then you spend your time there and you really start to figure that out. But that's the reality of hunting public land where you don't get to change anything. Is you're
Hmm.
going to find a lot of stuff that sucks.
Yeah.
Or maybe where there's people all over the place, there's ladder stand, there's hang on stand. But like you said, don't take it as discouragement, take it as, okay, well, this is where they are not. So now I have however many acres to not look at. And
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a really good feeling after you do get to clock, like check all that stuff off. And now you're starting to
yeah.
zero in
Yep.
on the money stuff. So,
Mm.
what do you got planned for this year? Ohio?
Yeah. So I have Ohio. I drew the Montana general tag again. So I plan on going back out to that mission property, probably hunt the opener out there. It's September 1st or 2nd, but I'll be there in the early season. I drew a muley tag in New Mexico, January 1st to 15th. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a good hunt, is what I hear. There's like a couple different levels of the hunt that I drew was like a 9%. They don't have preference points in their state. So I just put in and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll see. It was like a 9% draw odd. So I'm assuming there's deer there. I hope there's deer there because it's pretty far to go to New
Yeah.
Mexico. But that'll be my first. I'm really trying to like make my way into the Western game. That'll be my first muley hunt. My brother's supposed to come down there with me, which is going to be really fun because he's going to run the camera and we'll be glassing and camping and just figuring it out type of thing.
Can you do me a favor and beef up your Instagram, man? Because you got
Yeah. Yeah.
you got a lot to tell, man. And
Yeah, I do. I got a lot going on. Yeah. That's something I struggle with. I'm so bad at like we talk like it's the ego thing. And I try and be like mindful of it. So sometimes it's hard for me to be like, look at this thing I'm doing because I feel
yeah.
like a phony over it. But it like people want to see it. And like you said, there's like-minded people doing the same stuff where you look out and you're like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I should try that one day. Or that's cool to see some other dude, grinding it out, doing the thing.
Yeah, that's my motivation for it. I reached out to you and said, hey, do you have any other socials? Because like he's got to have more of his bucks out there somewhere, like.
Mhm.
And you're like, no, not really. And I was like, awesome. I thought that was awesome because I appreciate you being humble.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of it, like Hunt Quietly, they're out there right now, and I don't know if you're familiar with Hunt Quietly, but
Mhm.
it's a campaign against like influencers and stuff like that,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
and they're against posting trophy pics. And I get it. Like I see a little bit of their side, but I think there's a lot of people out there who are doing it for the right reasons. They're motivating people, they're showing people new ways. I've learned so much from other people on Instagram or YouTube that's been so beneficial. And so that's why I do it.
Yeah.
That's the whole meaning of the podcast, is just not to talk about me, but to open up other, avenues to different people and what they're doing and inspire people
Yeah.
and right back to the whole mindset conversation that you and I are having, that to help people become better versions of themselves. I mean, that is the goal. So I'll encourage you to put it out there because I think you can do that. I was going to tell you also, I think you have a gifting for articulating ideas and what you're doing. So yeah, keep that up for sure, because that's a hard thing to do, to describe things over
Mm-hmm.
a mic. So where can people find your 8 post?
Yeah. I
But
got
do it.
I have a hefty Instagram page. My name on there is Rutten. But the I is a one, so it's RUTT1N. And then I have a YouTube channel with a whole one video on it.
It's a
Same
great
name.
video.
Thank you. I do plan on making a video of my truck setup just to elaborate on that a little bit. And yeah, I encourage anybody who's into the mobile game. If you got a truck, put a cap on that thing, or build a plywood box on top of it, because it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's a game changer for sure in your effectiveness and just ability to do stuff, because you're not the amount that you spend on trips goes down so much when you're not spending 100 nights on
Yeah.
a pretty rough hotel, depending on where you're at. It's clean and you're out in nature and you get to move. And when I'm sleeping in my truck, I feel alive. I love it. It's great.
Me too. Yeah.
It's great.
We went out camping last weekend and I was like, I posted like a picture of a fire and I was like, this life. I was sitting around that fire and I'm like, I gotta do this more. Like I can't do this just for scouting and hunting. Like I need to get out and do this more in the back of the truck, because you're right. I feel alive in the back of it.
I try and I've done a couple road trips around the country. A couple years ago, I did like a 3-week road trip. I drove to Texas, Oregon, down California, back around Wyoming, and slept in the truck the whole time and didn't shower for like 8 days at a time. And it's great. I mean, it's just like, for me, I just feel alive. It's just, you can do whatever you want. You can go wherever you want. You got your own little house on wheels with you. It's cool.
With ease. Like it's
so easy.
It's just like driving your truck. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so easy. And you don't even have to be elaborate. Like I'm fortunate to have the setup that I have, because I have a really cool friend who knows how to use power tools and make wood things happen. But put a mattress on the ground. It looks like they sell cots that fit in the back of trucks now. Like you don't need all this stuff. You just somewhere to sleep, somewhere to not get rained on.
I don't know what number it is, but we have a podcast. It's called the Mobile Hunter.
Okay.
And we did it about a month ago, and it's myself and 2 other guys, and we go through our breakdown, and
Cool.
you can see it on YouTube too.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
And we have different varieties. Like those guys, I think have like the 4 seasons. Like it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then I've got like the basic, easy get in, get out, nothing special, but I love it. I actually picked up something from you though. You built a wall on the side of it looks like a wall.
On the on the other side.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna put a top on it, make it kind of like a table on top as well.
Yeah. It's nice that side across from the bed is like 2 little shelves. I keep my food and it makes a little table, and then that cubby in the bottom is a nice place for stinky boots and gross stuff that you don't want in your immediate vicinity. But yeah, I don't have electric. I've used a Mr. Buddy heater in the past. I've been looking into, people are doing the whole diesel heater thing. It's something to think about, especially because I plan on camping in the truck for the Montana hunt, which it'll be fine at night. It gets to like 100 during the day that time of year out where I'm hunting, but the New Mexico hunt will be chilly. And the Mr. Buddy heaters work, but there's something just kind of sketchy about running the Mr. Buddy heater in enclosed space. I used to run I broke it, but I had like a CO detector
Yeah.
in the back. They say they shut off, but that diesel heater setup looks pretty legit.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I'm leaning pretty heavy over there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
they're pretty cool.
awesome, man. Well, we've been on for like an hour and a half. I can't thank you enough. This is awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to have you back on. This is a great
Yeah, for sure, man. I'd
conversation.
love to. Fun.
And I really encourage your YouTube channel. What's it called?
Rut RUTT1N.
Same as your Instagram.
Yeah.
Go check out the video of the buck last year. It's an awesome video to watch, and go check out the post that he does have out there. And I'm sure you're open to guys reaching out and
Oh,
asking
for sure,
questions.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love talking deer hunt. I love meeting people into the same stuff. I mean, it's like I feel alive doing this stuff, so it's awesome.
awesome, man. I can't wait to see more of your adventures for sure. And
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thanks again for coming out to the dojo, man. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
anytime. Thank
And
you.
thanks to everybody else for coming out. We will be back next Thursday with another Whitetail Master. And until then, embrace the journey. See ya. Well, that is a wrap for us here at the dojo. We'll be back next Thursday with another Whitetail Master. You can also listen to us every Tuesday for our 10-minute Tuesday episode where I break down a tactic, talk about mindset and personal development, or anything else that might jump in my head in 10 minutes or less. If you like what we are doing here at the dojo, please give us a review. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Mobile Hunters Dojo.